So I think the next best thing to do is take a quick look at MAST. So I'm about to click on sign in. It's worth mentioning we do have it's set up using single sign-on. So if you look at the URL when I click on it, you'll see it's going to Microsoft Active Directory, and that is that takes you through it, automatically signs you in. So there's the user management is done using your own existing systems, which I think is really important, because when you've got a new system, users were very concerned that it's another thing they have to log into, which is massively reduces the likelihood that they'll actually use it. So it uses your own systems. Declaration, so you need to say before it lets you look at anything that you understand the purpose of MAST. It's for safeguarding duties. Misuse of the system can result in disciplinary proceedings. Just a nice reminder to everyone that we're working with quite sensitive data here, albeit case information. The case information is not visible through MAST, so it is just showing those links and speeding up those lateral checks. So this is the search screen, and I'll take you through a couple of examples here. I'll take you through 3 or 4, just sort of based on time, but you can search it by name. It asks for 2 fields for name, date, month, year, so name or date of birth, address or postcode, reference ID or NHS ID. So again, a number of ways in which you can search. And I'll just go through one case, and I'm an officer, and I was at an incident at, let's say, I was at Teal Close, and I met someone. I can't remember their name. It began with F, so you can put in like a combination of search information, and I can see. Actually, okay, yeah, it was Flossie Dent. Okay, so there was this incident, and there was just something about it from that I was a little bit concerned about, but I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure whether to refer it or not. And if I click on search by, if I search by person, you can you'll just see these 2 incidents, right? Because I'm just searching according to Flossie Dent, and that search by person piece. So you can see how that's visualized here, and it's just those 2 records that you saw a moment ago. If you search by address, it actually pulls up any incidents related to that address. So searching by person also shows if Flossie Dent moved. You can kind of follow that individual where they move. If you search by address, it shows any incident related to the location. And search by address, because it's generally a much more useful thing to click on, because the address information is what police records and fire records tend to use. You're starting to see actually there have been quite a few incidents here. And that's much more than if you just look at Flossie. So it's just kind of interesting to say, actually, okay, there's someone else here called Tabitha. I was a little concerned about whether or not to make the referral. Now I know that I can, or I can learn a little bit more about it, so I can contact Children's Services or understand a bit more about these NHS records if I needed to. Contact the safeguarding leader at the NHS to find out a bit more about this case. So it just kind of, the information here is enough to pique your professional curiosity and allows you to look at it in a little bit more detail. If I just show you another example now, so this is the system using sample data, obviously. So Flossie Dent doesn't actually live in Walsall, but we do have the system working with data across the West Midlands that we're about to roll out to people on the front line for that final user acceptance testing. So another case, I'm going to just have a look at Edna. In this case, I'm a social worker. I'm about to make a case closure decision. I'll just search as Edna Minks. And I can see actually there've been quite a few instances. So in terms of this decision, let's just see. Okay, there have been 24 matches in the last 12 months. I can see actually, these were actually, a lot of these were quite recent. There's been a mix of activity. So in terms of that closure decision, it gives me a lot of other connections or contacts I can find out about to inform whether or not that it is a case that should be closed or not. I think what's really interesting here is that we looked through, in the sample data, we looked through an actual case that looked not dissimilar to this. And it was a case where there hadn't been, in actual fact, I'll just show you that again. There hadn't been, a case closure, the case had been closed. They'd been assessed, as an adult, and they'd been assessed as there not being any further need. And what's really interesting is what happens in that instance, right? So if they're assessed as not being in need, adults can say no to the additional support offered. But you can see the impact that's having on service demand. And it's sort of an area where you want to think about, well, what other solutions can you put in place? So when we looked at this case within the West Midlands, it was a case where I think there was another mechanism for adult services rather than MASH. It was the self-neglect panel. So this case has now been referred to the self-neglect panel as a mechanism to encourage that household to engage and hopefully carry out that early intervention activity. If I talk about one other case, it was I have to remember the sample cases that we'll put in here. So if I look at FOBs, so Carly FOBs, again, same sort of situation. I'm making a case closure decision. If I again search by address to see the maximum number of connections here, I can see actually here's a case where there were some incidents, but there was some time ago. They all relate to kind of when that referral was first made. There haven't been any incidents since. So actually there isn't particularly any new information from partners here. So it sort of saves me having to necessarily go to them. I can see with confidence that hasn't been the case. And I just, again, I still have to make that professional judgment based on what I know. But you know, MAST is sort of giving me the assurance that there isn't anything there about other partners that I should know about. And then a fourth example, and again, do ask questions about this, you know, drop them into the chat. I'm looking forward to, hopefully there'll be plenty of room for questions at the end. Yeah, again, I'll go back to being, I'm an officer. I was at an incident. It was someone called Nikki Cipriani. And I'm just going to highlight a search feature here. So when I click search, okay, that comes up as no results, but they didn't give me they just told me their name and I just wrote it down. So actually you need to be able to search a bit more flexibly. Can't remember exactly how it's spelled. It's definitely Nikki something, and Cipriani, I think it was Cipriani. So I'm just going to try this. And actually, the name's been entered differently in the database, or it's spelled this way, Nikki Cipriano. Okay, so it's got that flexibility around searching these records. Again, if I search by address, do I make a referral decision? I'm deciding whether or not there's a safeguarding concern here. Actually, there have been quite a few incidents, and it helps to inform whether or not actually I should refer the case to safeguarding. I might want to look at it. You can see actually there's quite a few different individuals in the household. In the sample data, we haven't included dates of birth, but I think the point of this case is actually there are some children involved in the household as well. So just kind of, in this case, you probably would want a safeguarding referral to be made, and it just helps inform that decision. I think the final point is that there are some advanced analytics here that you can request. We've not built it into the system because we're still figuring out the best way to visualize them, but they are what the team at the West Midlands have been working